Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
Morning, y'all.
Everybody
How's
doing okay
everybody doing?
today?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. How about y'all?
Just hanging in there, trying to get caught up from being so far behind.
I know what you
My
mean.
eyes are open and the sun is shining, so that's a good day.
Well,
Well,
that's right.
there is that.
You're on the right side of the grass.
Yes.
You're still vertical.
Yep. And hopefully not hungover.
That's right. That would not be a good thing.
Yeah. Aaron is young, so not sure yet.
That's one thing I never got into was drinking. I just figured it was a waste of money.
Well, it is a waste of money, but unfortunately I got into it in college because my grades were bad, so oh well.
Well,
But I got over it.
I mean, I'll have like my wife and I, we'll have a beer occasionally, or she'll have a glass of wine. And then, like when we do, it's usually a craft beer. Yeah, a wild night for me and my wife is we'll have a beer apiece. Usually, we'll just split a beer.
A wild night for a wild night for my wife and I is that we actually stay up till 9:30 before we go to sleep, go to bed.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah,
too.
having kids takes it out of you.
How many kids do you have, Tom?
Oh, I have two at the house, and now we have two grandkids.
Oh wow.
So yeah, but getting married moves your bedtime up an hour. Having kids moves it up an hour still. Uh,
What time y'all get up?
oh, I get up at 6, and she's usually maybe getting out of the bed when I'm getting ready to leave the house at 6:30 or so. But luckily, because the kids are sleeping in now, they're of that age. But otherwise, oops, I can't remember the last time I slept in past about 7:30.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We get up about 5:30. Uh, get all the chores done before we take off to work. So anyway, is Keith coming today? Right?
He was supposed to. I haven't heard that he wasn't, but he's not here yet. But here lately, he's been coming in a couple minutes late. I don't know if his clocks are a couple minutes low. I mean, he's
Okay.
consistently about 3 to 5 minutes late here lately.
Uh, well, get started today. I came across a thing yesterday, and this really doesn't pertain to HR, to human resources, but it does pertain to agribusiness, and it probably, well, I'm not going to say probably, it pertains more to Tom's class than it does this HR class. But I still think it's interesting to look at and discuss a minute. And this is there was a speech given by Dr. David Cole, and Dr. Cole was one of my professors at Virginia Tech for the farm business and finance class. And I assume Tom, you had him too, right?
Yes, I did. And just 10 seconds ago, I was messing with a link to a recording I have of him in Blackboard. I mean, literally, like 2 minutes ago.
Oh wow. It may be the same one about what separates the top 20% of farmers from the bottom 20%.
No, but I think I've heard that one, but this one was about financial ratios and stuff.
Oh, okay. Gosh, those things bring back nightmares. me.
Yeah, they do.
If it
That's why
wasn't for
Excel.
those little, if it wasn't for those little 3x5 index cards he let us bring to the exams, I don't know.
Oh yes, and I got the finest pointed mechanical pencil I could, and I wrote teeny.
Yeah,
I
I did
I
too.
had my entire notebook on that 3x5 card.
Uh, I loved his class though. I learned a
Yes,
lot out of it. All right, so I wanted to kind of go over this because we're in agribusiness, and I don't care, whether you're talking farming or talking to business. I still think these these traits are go across the board on whatever. And Dr. Cole says the top 20% of farmers, they know the cost of production. They have realistic revenue targets. They keep in touch with the lender. Remember, nobody likes surprises, so you keep in touch with your credit people. Uh, you keep up with your finances before December. You know what's going on before the end of the year. They take responsibility for their outcomes, and they have a fallback plan. And then they also train family members to take over. And then they have the attitude better before bigger. Um, you get better at what you're doing before you expand. Whereas the traits of the bottom 20% of the farmers, they have wishful thinking for revenues. They're not aware of their costs. They don't know the costs of living. They they won the cash rent lottery. Um, they never update their balance sheet. When it comes to making decisions, it's emotional over objective. They have no fallback plan, and they don't take responsibility and accountability for their actions. They always just say it's not my fault. Um, when times get tough, they want an easy way out in adversity. So I think that's I think that's pretty neat little deal, and I think it pertains more to all businesses other than just the farming. Um, I remember, gosh, was it Dr. Cole or was it Dr. Edkin over in the dairy science deal? He said, "Don't." He said, "Do not make business decisions based on emotion. Figure it, put a pencil to it. Don't make emotional decisions." Um, and I think that's one thing uh, some some of those low people in the low 20% do. They got to have the latest and greatest, and they don't pencil it out to see if it's going to pay for itself. But anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you, uh, even though it pertains more to Tom's class than this one. But I hope you found that interesting as well.
yeah, that
Tom, you
was
have
good.
any comments on that? Since that's more
Uh,
this deal.
Not right off. Keith came in while you were talking about it, and
Yeah,
unfortunately, I was
saw him
looking. I
walk
was
in.
looking at the thousand bee stings he has on his arm, so that kind of distracted me too.
Well, I know you're probably not going to disagree with the great Dr. Cole. So.
No, no. I mean, I've gone through and I found like 2 or 3 his recordings last year that I've like posted in my 143 class. That, like I say, the first one of them is bubbling up for next week. But I mean, yeah, he knows his stuff, and I can't argue with a thing he said that I've ever heard.
No, I can't either. You kind of wonder, you know, I always wondered why somebody like Dr. Cole doesn't get tapped for like Secretary of Ag or something like that, you know.
Yes, yeah,
I've
that I
always
hadn't thought
I've
about that,
always
but
wondered that about him, why he never was chosen. But uh, you know, I don't know. Because he seems like he's always right. Even stuff I come across today or be reading or something, I'm like, man, Dr. Cole was right.
and the sad thing is it all basically it seems like common sense, and when whatever he says, you're like, yeah, duh. I mean, that's kind of your reaction to it. It's like, why doesn't everybody see this and know this? It just sounds so basic, but that's the part of the way he communicates it. But like you say, it's just right.
And I wonder, too, if that's not the problem, you know, because everything's so political. And Dr. Cole, you know, as much as I liked him and stuff, but when it came, you know, to his class, everything was black and white. And so common sense, because it all, you know, he put numbers to everything. And if the numbers don't add up, you just don't do it, or it's wrong, you know. And maybe that's why. I don't know. Just one of those things that makes me go, hmm. But anyway, all right, away from my distractions. Um, Tuesday, yeah, today's Wednesday. What's today? Wednesday or Thursday? Today's Thursday. So Tuesday, we started to talk about chapter 12, uh, interacting with employees. And as I was, hopefully, y'all had a chance to read this chapter since then. Did y'all read it?
Yes.
No, I didn't. I didn't
All
get a
right.
chance to.
What about you, Aaron? Did you did you read it?
No, sir, I haven't had to. Haven't had a chance yet.
All right. Like I said the other day, I think this is one of my favorite chapters because it pertains to everything in all of our relationships. Uh, so, just as a quick overview, we talked about some traits of an effective supervisor. Uh, we went over that. We went over a couple basic human interactions, a stroke and ritual. We said a stroke was a verbal or physical way to acknowledge a person's value. A ritual was a mutual exchange of strokes, reciprocal validation for each person's worth. And we talked about the need for personal validation is great, even to the point of negative attention is better than no attention. And we talked about the cold shoulder being the opposite of a stroke. And then we talked about how the tones of our voice can be positive, it can be neutral, we can sound interested, or we can sound negative. Um, and then I think we ended up talking about we got to be cautious because uh, sometimes what we intend is interpreted wrong. You know, I've that happens to me a lot of times. What I intend, how I, what I say tends to be interpreted the wrong way. Uh, But in a business situation, we've got to be careful that it's not taken in the context of sexual harassment or that air of superiority, that we're better than somebody else. And I think that's about where we ended up there. Uh, so, Keith, you said you read this chapter. What did you think about it? You think it was pretty useful or
I think
insightful? Or?
I think the culture issue needs to be played up more since we're in a global economy, and like in America or Western civilization, shaking hands is a very common accepted way of greeting people. But if you meet people from India, Pakistan, and stuff like that, touching on one another is prohibited. So it's an awkward position sometimes when you stick your hand out and then reciprocate, or you might grab their hand or something. It's so that kind of comes into play. So you need to know uh, not only your employees but also your customers when you're dealing with them.
Yeah, and that's right. Asians don't, or at least people from Japan don't shake hands that much either, do they? Don't they kind of like bow to each other or something as a greeting? Uh, but you're right with the cultural barriers. And we did talk a little bit about this uh, Tuesday with language and manners and sayings and words. Uh, even the differences within our country. But you get into different dealing with people with different countries. It's pretty different. We could be offensive, as Keith was saying. Um, Now, this book was written basically with that, with agricultural in mind. And most of the migrant work, or most of the foreign workers we have in agriculture are Hispanics. Uh, and I had an opportunity to. I lived in Mexico, lived and worked down there for about 8 months or so, and then I was down up in Southern California, and I worked specifically with the the Hispanics there in different areas of Southern California, and that culture is really different. Uh, and they're good people, very good people, very hardworking people. Um, and but the they're very, it's a different culture, different mannerisms. Doesn't make them wrong, doesn't make us wrong. It's just different, and you've got to learn that. You got to learn that culture, um, and to be able to relate with them. Um, but they are good people. They are hardworking people, and I met some really neat people working there. When we think about jobs in agriculture, some potential jobs, and I go back to Ransom Leonard some. He's a local guy, and he was his first job out of college. He was buying cattle, and uh, he was working for this guy, and they were buying cattle and then shipping them overseas. And so he did a lot of traveling and negotiating, and he really had to learn the cultures of these other countries. Uh, you know, Conducting business with them, and it wasn't, it was his head. He was going to Russia and Turkey and a lot of the European countries and Asian countries um, with that deal. I don't know how much. Might have gone to South America some. I don't know if he went to Asia, but I mean Africa. But I do know he spent a lot of time in Russia and Turkey uh, and Canada. But anyway, uh, I'll agree with you. The culture barriers. Uh, you really need to study up on what you're going to be working with. Uh, and don't, and if you have a little grasp of the language, that's good, but don't go making up words. Uh, you know, take Spanish for example. You know, people that we try to learn some Spanish words, and we kind of Americanize it. They call it Spanglish, um, and that can get you in trouble. If you're embarrassed, you don't just put a ICDO on the end of that word, embarrassito. That means pregnant. So you don't want to get up there, tell somebody, get up there and be speaking to a group of people and say, I'm very embarrassed to be here, or embarrassed, or nervous. Uh, you don't use the word embarrassito because you're just saying you're pregnant. That'll get you a few laughs. Uh, so, you know, do your research on that. It didn't happen to me. I will say that. But I did see it. It did happen to some other people. I have seen it, but it did not happen to me. Just to clear my name on that one. Now, when we think about people from other cultures, um, do we have do we have things in common with people from other countries? Do we have more in common with them, or do we have or do we have more differences?
with more in common.
Okay, why do you say that, Keith?
In my experience, I found people all want the same thing. They want shelter over the head, food on the table, and money to buy a beer with.
Okay, anybody disagree with Keith?
I agree with him.
What about you, Aaron? You agree or disagree?
I agree.
All right, yeah, I do too. I think most people, uh, different cultures. I think we've got a lot of things in common. When we get past whatever prejudices we may have, we get past culture barriers. Um, we have a lot of things in common. So it's kind of like that old, gosh, that song was it Police? Either Police sung it or Sting sung it. I can't remember if he was solo then or not, but it was. I guess it was with the Police, and he was still with the group, the Police, and it was back in the '80s. And I don't even remember the name of the song, but there's a line in it that says the Russians love their children just as much as we do.
That was on his first solo album. The name of the song is Russians.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I knew you or Keith would bail me out on that one.
Yep. That's why I'm here.
I
Useless
appreciate
information.
it. That's right. So it kind of tells how old we are, Aaron and Jasmine. So, we all have a lot of things in common. As Keith said, we all want food, we want shelter. You know, we love our parents love us, we love our family, we have our friends, and we want the best for our families and friends or the company that we're representing. Um, but people, they're a lot like animals. Um, you take a herd of, or you take all the Angus cows there are in the country, and you'll find there's more differences between individual cows than there are between the Simmentals and the Angus. And people are the same way. There's going to be greater differences between individuals of any given nation or culture, um, those differences between those individuals going to be greater than the differences between different groups. Y'all agree or not?
Agree.
Yeah. You know, what are some of the differences between individuals?
Their personality, for one.
Okay. Personalities,
Their work habits.
work habits, their past work experience. Um, you take you guys and Keith, compared to Keith, with work experience, uh, he's got a lot of experience behind him, and y'all are getting ready to start your careers. Um, you can learn a lot from him. How about education? That makes differences between people, right? Between individuals.
I
Religion.
think I think social
It,
status is probably the big thing in the United States, probably.
yeah, social status. I was getting ready to mention it. That's a big one. And it's not just so in this country. If you take a look at other countries, is it India? Whatever status you're born in, that's the status you are, and you don't have that chance to move up, or you didn't. Now, since a lot of the call centers and stuff are in India, I think that's kind of changing that culture. But for for years, whatever system you were born in, or whatever social standing you were born in, that's the social standing you stayed at the whole time. Uh, but that does make a difference. Social standing, religion, past experience, education, personality, uh, and your belief structure. What do you believe?
Then I think the final differentiating thing is money.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, I don't know why it is. Uh, and I'm not speaking for all people, but some people that have money look down upon those that are struggling. They have that air of superiority about them. And then, uh, and as bad as I hate to say this, and I don't think Aaron and Jasmine fall into this category because they're both going to school and they're both working and, typical broke college students, at least in my opinion. Um, a lot of it seems like now, kids with parents that have money, they have that entitlement attitude. Um, they don't believe in, they don't feel they have to earn what they get. Is that what are you thinking along the same lines, Keith? Or are you thinking different or what?
Um, yes and no. I would say more of status. I've got a BMW and you driving a 10-year-old Ford or something. That's the kind of thing like that. Likes seem to want to congregate with likes. Uh, that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Uh, I would, yeah, yeah, I agree with you on that to a point. Uh, I know a few years ago we were having to replace my wife's vehicle. She had a Nissan Xterra. And that's a good little vehicle. I love that thing. but it wasn't four-wheel drive. And where she lived before we got married, she didn't need four-wheel drive. She's down in Wilmington, North Carolina. Never snowed. It's flat ground. And good solid vehicle. I loved it. Roomy, comfortable. Um, but when we moved up here to the mountain, back to southwestern Virginia, that thing, if it snowed, she wasn't getting it to the house. And, that's not a big deal to me. I'm a guy. I'll get down there, and that's nothing against Jasmine there, but, I'll put on a set of chains and go on. Or get a feed sack and fill it full of gravel and throw in the back of my vehicle. I that's how I got along in at college. I had one of those little Ram 50 pickups, something that it got me around. Uh, it was affordable to me. And, in the wintertime, I always kept a set of chains, kept a shovel, and I'd get me some feed sacks and go to the quarry and fill them up with gravel and throw them in the back of my truck. And it worked good. I got along pretty good at Tech, and I took it out to Nebraska and got along pretty good. And every once in a while, I'd have to get somebody to pull me out. Uh, but, that's all right. Um, but my wife wasn't going to put on a set of chains. She didn't know how to do it, and I taught her and worked with her and worked with her with it. And she'd still call me, Dwayne, come down here and pull me up to the house. So I'd hook a chain onto her and pull her home every night for a couple of weeks. But she decided she needed to get a four-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive. And her brother, he buys cars, fixes them up, resells them, kind of flips them a little bit. And he ended up getting a BMW crossover vehicle. And so he kept saying how good that vehicle was, and so on and so forth. And so and he was down in Raleigh, so we traded because he didn't need a four-wheel drive down there, and so we traded him. And I'll be honest with you, I did not like driving it, just because I figured people, it. I didn't. I just didn't like the way it made me feel, me driving a Beamer. You know, uh, I felt I was above my raising. Even though we got it cheap, I just did not feel comfortable driving it. And then I found out a couple other things about Beamers. BMW means bring money with you. There ain't nothing cheap about a Beamer. People can say how good of a vehicle they are. I don't care. Something goes wrong, those parts cost triple the amount of a Dodge or a Chevy or a Ford. And that car, something was going wrong with it all the time. We had it for, I don't know, about 6 or 8 months, and we traded it in. We couldn't keep it running. It was killing us. We put more into it in repairs than we did when we got it off her brother. But I wouldn't have one of those things. I just didn't like the way it made me feel. That's my experience with Beamers.
A Ford is good for me.
Same here.
Fords. I've had two Ford trucks. One of them was a 7.3 diesel. I bought. I didn't buy it new. I bought it from a friend of mine, and uh, he said it had. He bought it used, and he said it had about 150,000 miles on it. I bought it from him, and I started having some trouble with it. And the mechanic, I told the mechanic, well, I bought it used, and the guy bought it used and supposed to have had about 150,000 miles on it total. He's like, no, this truck has about 250,000 miles on it. And I said, okay. So I drove that thing for another 100-some thousand miles. That's a good truck. That 7.3 was a good motor. And then it just got to where the transmission was going out on me, and it was a standard, but I don't know, something with the transmission. It wasn't the clutch and the throwout bearing. It was the transmission itself, and the engine was about shot. Of course, it had at least 450,000 miles on it. So I traded it in for another Ford, and this time I got a V10, and that thing was the money pit. I couldn't keep it running. So my mechanic told me I needed to trade it in, and I traded it off on a Dodge, and that's been a good truck for me. Now I know people with Fords, and they've gotten along fine with them. We had one growing up, an old gas motor one, and boy, that thing was a beast. But that V10 I had, it kind of turned me against Fords, and then they changed their diesels. But I don't have a diesel. I can't justify it. So I guess I'm partial to Fords or Chevys at this point in my life. I mean, Chevys or Dodges, just because of my past experience with the V10. But it's not to say Ford's not a good truck. It's just my preference. They got the best looking truck, though. I will admit that.
I've had 2 Broncos and 4 Mustangs.
I'd love to have a Bronco, one of them old 1970 models.
Oh, extremely top heavy? You go, boy. My grandmother had one.
Really? Boy, those things were tough.
Yes, they were. I about rolled one of them on the backside of the farm. My grandmother's.
Really?
Yep, that was one of my
I
9
didn't know
lives
they were
used up that day.
heavy. I didn't know they were that top heavy. I never saw one get stuck very often. I don't think I ever saw one get stuck.
I
Kind of
guess
like
it's
those
not that top
international
heavy, but just
scouts.
such a short, narrow wheelbase. I mean, that sort of definitionally makes them top heavy, but there ain't no
Right.
roof or anything to it, so. But still, it's unstable enough if you're going sideways, like I
Or on the
was.
side of a hill.
I never got stuck
Anyway,
on Friday nights. Back in
what's
high
that?
school, I never got stuck.
Like I said, I never seen one of those things get stuck. I'm talking about the older ones. I don't know about the ones that were out in the 80s when there's Bronco 2s.
Yeah,
But
Aaron, I'm assuming yours was newer than mine.
I had a 89 and then a 96 Bronco full size, and then I also had a Bronco 2.
I like those things. Uh,
The Bronco 2 was a little scary. Now that one I've almost flipped it a few times.
okay. All right. Get back to our lecture here. Talking about cultural barriers and the commonalities we have with culture between different cultures. Uh, there's some things that we got to be cautious about. We don't want to act on generalizations or faulty information about a culture. You know, basically stereotyping them. Uh, we don't we don't want to do that. And then, as Keith pointed out earlier, we need to we need to know or study a little bit about that culture because uh, personal space, touching, and eye contact. Those are different cultures have different ideas about that. You know, some cultures, their personal space is very, very small. Other cultures, it's pretty big. My personal space, I've got some personal space. You know, I don't like it intruded. Uh, so mine's probably a little bit wider than other people's. Uh, but a lot of times, our observations based on their own are based on their own weaknesses, and it reflects their inability to connect with that culture. So, you know, we need to look at ourselves uh, and um, try to fix ourselves, and we may be able to connect better with other cultures. You know, we throw out the stereotypes, learn about their culture, and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I think we'll see that we have a lot in common with them. So, to get down to it, and as we've mentioned earlier with the cultures, people are basically the same. Um, we have we all have the same needs and the same desires. Um, Now, working in agriculture, I've had I've had to work, especially when I was on the farm in North Carolina. We had a lot of the employees were from Mexico, and some of them spoke English, some of them didn't. When I was in when I was at Stewart's, sometimes we hired uh, migrant workers to come in and cut the tobacco and spirit. Um, and those guys didn't know, they couldn't speak English very well. I think they had one person that would act as the interpreter. Uh, but when you're in, you take a look at the landscaping business, there's a lot of migrant workers in that as well, in the construction business. So chances are, if you're going to hang around in agriculture, you're going to be working with people from different areas, different cultures. So when you get in that position, or you're working with people from another country, what do you do when there's a language barrier? When that language barrier exists, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle it if you're the coworker?
You might could find somebody that could translate for you.
Okay, you can find somebody translate. More than likely, they're going to know a little bit of English, unless they're a true migrant worker where they just come up here on their HB2A visas, uh, and then go back to their country at the end of the year. They, they're probably going to be able to understand a little bit of English, not a whole lot, and they may or may not be able to speak English. Um, but if you're working with them, do you think you're going to be able to communicate with them? You can if you try. There's going to be some commonalities. Uh, you got some sign language. Hopefully, you both know what your job is to do, and you just kind of go do it, and you just kind of fall into a routine, uh, and go from there. But what are you going to do if you're a supervisor or a manager or an owner, and you have to train or discipline an employee? What are you going to do then? You going to use your translator then, Jasmine?
I guess.
Yeah, I would. And why would you?
So you can make sure they understand clearly what they
Exactly.
did wrong.
That's right. If you're having to train them, you want to make sure they understand fully what they're going to do because, you're worried about production, you're worried about their safety, uh, you're worried about them not tearing up stuff. So you're going to use a translator. Same thing with discipline. If you have to discipline somebody uh, or talk to them about their behavior, you need a translator because, like you said, you don't want any type of misunderstanding. Now, when you do this, are you going to use a translator, somebody on the farm that can speak both languages, or are you going to use somebody from the outside?
Um, Maybe somebody from the outside.
Yeah, it's best to use an outside translator, especially if it's in a disciplinary type setting, because you know people are private. You're getting in trouble with the boss. You don't want everybody and their dog to know it, right? You kind of want to keep things quiet. So if it's somebody else that works on the farm and they're doing the translating for you about the discipline, it's going to put that.
Dwayne accidentally got disconnected. Please hold, everybody. Dwayne, can you hear us?
Yeah, looks like it just came back on. I don't know what
Yeah.
happened
No, no, we don't. She had to try several times before you reconnected. But anyway, welcome back to the party.
there. All right, well, thanks. So, uh, so those are some, those cautions, uh, and when we need to use an outside translator. Um,
I can't remember.
so then, so they talk about the chapter talks about culture barriers, and then it goes into conversational skills. How important is it to have good conversational skills?
Very important.
Very important, especially in
I
sales, right?
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you've got to have people skills. Um, and I was thinking, I'll pick on Southern states since you work there. Um, my when I first got out of college, um, I got a sour taste in my mouth with Southern states. Um, I was working for Stewart's, and we were getting ready. I'd been over to the co-op a little bit to get some stuff, um, and but they really didn't know me. And I went over there and to get a tube feeder for calf in case I had to tube a calf to get some colostrum down it. And so I asked the manager, I was looking around, they didn't have any. And I asked him, I said, "Do you have any tube feeders in the back for calves?" And he said, "No. Why would we carry those?" And I looked at him and I said, "It's calving season coming up, for the spring calvers. You ought to have something like that on hand." And he looked at me funny. He goes, "We can order one." And I said, "Well, when's it going to get here?" He goes, "Oh, I don't know." I said, "Okay." I said, I'll run down the other store and see if they have one." And he goes, "Well, give me your phone number and I'll give you a call when we get it." I said, "Well, when's your next truck due?" And he said, "It's due here Thursday." And I said, "Well, do you have time to call?" I said, "Can you call and get it put on the truck and it be here on Thursday?" He said, "Well, if I get around to it." And I looked at him and I said, "Why does Zan Stewart even mess with you?" He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, I know I worked for Zan Stewart and I know he gives you guys a lot of business. And you're you're treating me like crap. You don't even, offer to, you're not even gonna get on the phone and order this and have this here by Thursday. "Oh, well, if you work for Zan Stewart, it'll be here Thursday. Let me make that phone call right now." And I said, "No wonder you don't have good sales here. Because you treat everybody like crap unless they're a big time customer." He and I didn't get along for a while. I started going. There was another store, another Southern State store. It was actually a little satellite store from the main Lebanon store. And that guy, man, he was great. He didn't care who you were. He'd bend over backwards to get what you needed and to work with you. And I started going over there and doing business with them. And then Robert, my boss, started doing the same thing. And that little satellite store, because we started using that store, had a whole lot more business than the Lebanon store. And that manager got mad and closed down that satellite store because it made him look bad because we had moved over using that store instead of the main store. Anyway, that guy finally retired. They got a good guy in there now. He's he'll do. He's a good guy. And the other guy was good, but he was funny. He was weird. Um, and then when I was in Withville, the manager of that store at Withville, some days, man, he's a friendly guy, and other days he wouldn't give you the time of day. And so, there was another feed store there in Withville, and we were talking one day, and he goes, "Yeah, that manager there at Southern State's been the best thing for my business. I'm glad they moved him in because he's ran off everybody, and they all come to my store." And it. I don't care what business you're in, you got to have people skills now, and conversational skills. And you know, I guess I'm all right. Sometimes I've got my faults. I'll call things the way they are, and my people skills and my conversational skills probably aren't the best. I'm a full time, I'm a professional horse trainer, and uh, you know, I try to treat my clients nice and respectful, but when they come in there to bring me a horse to train, and then they start telling me how to train that horse, you want to see me get a little irritated and quit being nice? I will. If you're gonna pay me $600 a month to train your horse, don't tell me how to do my job. But I'm gonna tell you to take your horse. Since you know so much about it, you take your horse home and do it yourself. And I have told people that. Might not have been the best thing for me to say, but you know, uh, why are they sending me the horse if they know so much about it? And that's what I've asked them. And they don't really. That didn't go over too well. They learned to keep. They left the horse with me, but they kept their mouth shut. But I don't know. It's just I don't think that was good on their part either. You know. Now if they ask sincere questions, that's a different ball game. But when they're sitting there trying to tell me how to train their horse, that's another one. And you get in some predicaments. I mean, the one thing I try to do is to be totally honest with my clients, and and that's tough to do. Uh, this lady sent me a horse from She's from North Carolina, and she sent me a horse up there to train, little 2-year-old, and that thing was crazier than a loon. And I had it. She left it with me for about 3 months, and this horse, she'd be riding, and all of a sudden it'd just stop, run over backwards, and try to rear up, or get it, or take off running and just start leaping through the air like a rabbit. And she was pretty aggressive when you go to feed her. I took for the first week or so, I had to take a cattle stick in there with me when I went to put her grain in the stall. Um, and she learned to respect me and stay out of my space and not try to run me over for feed. Um, we got, but the lady called me and said, "Hey, what do I need to do with my horse?" You know, and I told her, this was tough because I could have had the horse another month or two. But I told her, I said, "I think you just need to sell your horse." I said, "She's crazy, and here's what she does." And I get along with it, but you've got a husband that doesn't know a lot about horses, and you've got a little kid, and I'm afraid somebody's going to get hurt. And I think the best thing you can do is sell the horse and take your losses. And she did. She came and got her horse and sold it or gave it away or something. About a year later, and I never heard from her again. I figured she was mad at me. About a year later, she called me, asked me to take another horse, and I did. I took it and I rode it, I think I had it for 2 months. She called me and she said, I'd like to come get my horse this weekend. And I said, well, that's fine. And she goes, how's it doing? And I talked to her about it and stuff. And I said, why don't you come down this weekend and ride your horse? But I think it'd be well worth your money to leave that horse with me another month because we're making a lot of progress. And she says, well, okay, I'll send you a check, but I won't be here this weekend. She just sent me a check in the mail, and I had the horse for another 2 months. She came down and rode the horse. She said, this is the first time I ever enjoyed riding this horse. She is tickled to death. But she knew I was going to be honest with her from that first horse. And that's happened to me on several occasions. You got to be honest, and even though it's going to could potentially knock you out of some money, you got to be honest, and you got to learn to be tactful. And I really need some help on that end of it. But you have to have conversational skills. That will, if you don't have them, if you have poor conversational skills, it's going to hinder your working relationships, and it's going to hinder your personal relationships. So, when we think about conversational skills, what are some of these skills that we have to have that we need to develop?
I think the big thing, I think what you're trying to say is you want to build or establish rapport, and you got to use the language that's understandable by the person you're trying to present your ideas to. So you don't want to use a college vocabulary with somebody that has a 8th grade education.
That's right. I'll agree with that. What else do we need to do? How does it make you feel if you're trying to talk to somebody and they're sitting there typing on their cell phone? You think they're listening to you?
No, you have to be
No, they're
respectful.
not. They're concentrating on sending a text or looking something up. Um, so some of the skills we need to be better conversationalists, we have to show interest. If somebody's talking to us, we need to be interested. What else do we need to do?
Speak in a respectful tone.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch all of that.
Speak in a respectful tone.
Okay, be respectful. Have a respectful tone. Any other ideas?
I think the biggest thing before you act on anything that's told to you, rephrase it back to the person. Make sure you're on the same path, that you're trying to achieve the same goal.
Okay, I'll agree with that. The other, we're hitting a bunch of good ideas and things that we need uh, to help us. Uh, but the other big, one of the big ones is listening. How important was it for you to listen to your customers' needs when you were in sales?
All the time.
All the time. Uh, a lot of times, and I've seen this a lot with salesmen. They'll come by and they're not a lot, or some salesmen. Uh, they'll come by and they'll tell me what I need and try to sell me something they think I need. And I can tell you this: I don't buy anything from them, but I know what I need.
In the sales interaction, the customer should occupy 80% of the conversation, the salesperson 20%.
That's pretty. That's pretty neat to know. And and I'm not, I don't think that's just for sales. I think that's for about whatever. When even like when I get clients in, I want them to tell me about the horse. I want them to tell me what their goals are. You know, more so because the more I learn about what their goals are and what the troubles they're having with this horse, if it's already riding or whatever, that's going to help me do a better job. Um, and it's going to help me to be honest with them because if they've got a goal to go win some major shows and that horse isn't athletic, they're wasting their money. And I'll tell them, your horse isn't this caliber horse, and I can tell that just by looking at it. And it may not be something they want to hear, um, and but I'm not going to take their money. I've got to sleep at night, and I've had them say okay, and they leave, and that horse is in my buddy's barn next week, and he's taking their money. And I go down there and ride with them. He'll say this horse will never make it. But by gosh, they're willing to pay me, and I need the money, and they're riding the horse, knowing it's never going to do what that client wants it to do. And he said to me, he said, I can't believe they didn't bring it to you. You're a lot closer to them. And I said, they did. Well, how come you're not riding it? I said, I told them the horse will never make it. And I just didn't feel right taking their money knowing this horse wasn't going to do what they wanted. He got mad at me over that. Turned out I was right. The horse never did never did make it, and they felt they wasted their money, and then they got upset with that trainer as well. And I would have if I was that client. Uh, but you've got to listen. You got to find out what they're trying to say. The only way you can do that is by listening. So you got to show interest. You got to listen. Uh, how easy is it to listen?
What did you say? I wasn't listening.
I asked how easy is it for to listen?
Yes, I know. I'm a child.
Oh, I know. I know. I was repeating it in case somebody else wasn't listening.
Well, most people aren't listening. They're not actively listening because they're thinking about what they're going to say when that person finishes talking.
You're right. I think that's. Did you find yourself falling into that trap when you were a salesman?
At first, and then it was a rule of thumb. I always counted to about 3 or 4 before I responded. And that gives you the impression that you are what you are. You're processing what you just heard. And then usually you'd come back and say, if I understand you, this is what concerns you, or this is the main issue that you're talking about. And then when you hear the response again, he says, well, chances are, no, that's not exactly what I was saying. This is what I was saying. So then when you start coming up with solutions, you're on the same page.
Okay. Thank you very much. Uh, Genuine listening is very hard work. Alfred ben- Benjamin said, genuine listening is hard work. There's little about it that's mechanical. We hear with our ears, but we listen with our eyes and mind and heart and skin and even our guts. So, uh, when we're talking to somebody and we're watching their reactions, we know whether or not they're listening to us or they're just hearing us, right? Y'all ever notice that?
Yes.
It's always kind of neat to do when you're talking to somebody like that and you're going through and then you throw something in there that says, in my right hand is $10 for you. And if they person says, let me see your right hand, or if they don't, then you know they're not listening to you.
I tell you what, you've got a lot of mind games. I love hearing your stories and your experiences.
Well,
Uh,
this is look, yeah, the mind games. A new one my daughter shared with me last night. I don't know where she picked this up, but it was interviewing questions and stuff prepared to for millennials. And one of the things that they go to when you go to interview, they want to check your cell phone. But what they're checking, they want to know the charge that you have on your cell phone. So if you're fully charged, that means you're prepared and ready to go to do anything. If you're not, that means you're kind of haphazard person, kind of irresponsible, is what the theory says. And one of the questions says, well, how often do you charge your phone? Do you charge every night? So you start the day with a fully charged, or you just charge it when the phone goes dead? So that's just one of the new questions out there for job interviews.
that's interesting. Uh, I saw a post or saw something on the internet the other day about this company that's giving, they've got a test to see if these millennials are snowflakes or not. We hear the term snowflakes with with the younger generation now, the ones that feel they're entitled and don't take responsibility for anything. And this company's come up with an exam, so all their potential candidates take this exam, and it weeds out. It tells them which ones are the snowflakes and which ones aren't. But I couldn't find that exam. I kept digging and digging for it, trying to find it to get some of those questions. Uh,
We'd probably be sued because of calling them snowflakes.
Probably, but I'm sure they don't say that. They're probably calling it a personality exam. Instead of asking them about being a leader, being the main character in a play or something, they're asking them something about those values of the snowflakes or the beliefs of the snowflakes. So uh, I don't know. I was trying to find it because I thought it would be interesting to bring into class with that. Why is it important to listen to our employees? Or our customers?
They're the ones that bring you money.
Okay, they're the ones that's making us the money, doing the work, or bringing in, buying from us or something. Why else?
Changes. They might know something new, innovative that you've never thought of.
Okay, it's another good point. When we truly listen to our employees, does it show that we value? Is it showing that we're valuing them, that we have that we consider them as value?
Yes.
Yeah, it does. And if you think back to one of our first lectures, what do employees expect from employers? One of those was to value their opinions, right? So by genuinely listen, by listening, genuinely listening instead of just hearing, it's showing that we value our employees. And if we were showing that we value our employees, are we increasing or decreasing our employees' value at that
You're increasing that, and also by paying close attention, as you're talking about, give them a pat on the back, probably aids to retention and probably saves you money in the long run.
point? Exactly. Exactly. Um, so, as managers, owners, you know, we want to increase our employees' value. We don't want to do anything to decrease that value. That's negative, and we just don't want to do it. It'll cost you in the long run. And so, by valuing their employees, increasing their value, and listening to them, are we going to meet their needs as an employer?
It depends on what they're asking for. If they're
Well,
asking for,
I'm not talking about maybe, you know, giving them promotions or giving them more money or stuff like that. I'm talking about, their needs to be valued, uh, their need of increasing their job skills and moving on, or, increasing their skills over time and reaching their potential. We're
well,
not,
I guess I'd answer you this way. When I worked road constructions many, many years ago, a summer job in college, um, we had one foreman. He had the best work crew, best everything. And one of the things he did before we ever left the plant or left for the job, he had everybody come around and get a cup of coffee or this or that, and kind of plan the day out, what we were going to be doing, what his expectations were, and where we were going to be and stuff. So we knew what we were doing. So where other leaders said, well, we're going out here, and you didn't know what you're going to be doing an hour from later. You were just kind of going from place to place. And I think he had the lowest turnaround, and most people wanted to work on his crew.
right. I can easily see that. You know, when we meet the needs of our employees, we show them value. We show them we care. We take interest in them. We're going to meet those needs. We're going to add value to them. Hopefully, we're going to increase their skills. Um, and we can do that just through our communication skills. Um, so we'll pick up on this next week, but we're out of time. But anyway, I think, you know, for those of you who haven't read this chapter, I think it's a good one for you guys to read. And I know we got a little sidetracked today, but that's all right.
Also,
Any,
I also listened to your recording from Tuesday. I really enjoyed the 9 points of why people left their job, and the very first one was managers. And in my experience, when anybody left, we have to do exit interviews and stuff. And the number one reason why people would put down their managers, and you know what the fault of the manager was? Micromanaging, not letting people do their job. In other words, conforming to the manager's expectations, meeting his metrics and not meeting the metrics of the customers.
I was trying to find that again today. I was wanting to pick your brain on that because I know you've probably been through that whole realm in your career. Uh, but yeah, I thought that was very interesting, and that micromanaging was mentioned in there about that. It's funny you said that other. It's interesting you said that study said micromanaging from the managers.
And the biggest thing, um, people leave and upper management doesn't do anything because upper management made a decision to hire or promote that manager, and they don't want to admit that they made an error. So they'll go through several employees or people leaving, good people, until finally they realize that they have made a mistake.
Yeah, and it's just not business. I think the state or government, federal and state, I think they're worse than the business school, in my opinion. Um, but that's just my opinion. But I think you're right. Nobody likes to admit they make a mistake, and because But anyway, it's important, guys, to communicate. You don't want to be the manager that everybody's leaving. So practice your communication skills. All right, I'll let you guys stretch your legs and stuff uh, before Tom's class, and I'll see y'all next week.
Who's our guest speaker?
What's that?
On our syllabus, you have scheduled for a guest speaker. Who's that going to be?
I try to get in this guy. He's with the Virginia Employment Commission. He works with the migrant workers, and try to get him to come in and talk. And I haven't been able to get up with him. He's been out in the field. Uh, so um, I need to try again.
Okay.
And I had that, you know, I've had him in here in the past especially when we've had a lot of students or some students that had some migrant workers on their farm. Uh, I don't know how much it would pertain to you guys now. But anyway, I'll see what I can see. I'll keep trying. This time of year is really hard on him to get in here. So anyway, we may or may not be able to get him. I may have to try to find somebody else. So um, anyway, y'all have a good weekend. Stretch your legs. I'll see you next week. If you have any questions, give me a holler.
Okay, bye.
Have a
Bye.
good one, Dwayne.
Y'all too.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that at the beginning of class. Teaching it? Yes.